So welcome back. I know that there's some competition this afternoon, so I appreciate you all of you who decided to show up. I appreciate you being here. And for those of you way in the back, there are some seats here, and I won't bite if you're in the very front, but at least here, then I don't have to, you might be able to see a little bit better. Because as you saw this morning, I do move around, and I sit, and I kneel, and so feel free to move closer if you ever can't see or hear. Can you all hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a great space for acoustics, and I'm pretty good at projecting. Well, just let me know if you can't hear. So, just heard a comment. Remind me your name again. Judy. About when you read stories in the Bible, I mean they can be moving, they can be inspirational, but it's hard because you're reading in silence. It's hard to know what the attitude was, what the emotion was, what the what it would have sounded like, what tone might have been taken. And of course, I don't know. I do some research and I try to make an educated guess, but it's just one person's interpretation. But I don't do that willy-nilly. I do try to base my decisions on what I think would be a likely scenario. And because I don't have a lot of words, as Bonnie mentioned today, if you were to follow along, which please don't, because you'll miss out if you're doing this, on all the stuff that you can see. But if you were to follow along, it would be very easy to follow along because I do stick very closely to the script, if you will. But what I do add a whole lot, but it's with the facial expressions and the gestures and posture and movement and placement and pause and tone of voice and change in volume and change in tempo. And so all of those things kind of recapture the life that is inherent in this library of books that we call and refer to as the living word. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to leave Mark. I might tell one other from Mark, but this morning was all Mark. So we're going to hear some other books of the Bible, or pieces from other books of the Bible. And there's no real theme for this afternoon other than stories that might surprise you in one way or another. So that's going to be my question. After each story, we'll see, you take one or two people to say, and hopefully the conversation around lunch got you primed the pump for that. I'll just ask, anything surprise you about that story? And we'll get one or maybe two comments, then I'll move on to the next story. I have a friend and colleague in the network of biblical storytellers, if you can believe there is such a thing. And there's a whole network of us. Isn't that amazing? And he has written several books, all with provoking in the title. So his first book was Provoking the Gospel. And then he wrote 4 more, one for each gospel. So Provoking the Gospel of Matthew, Provoking the Gospel of Mark, Luke, and John. And he says in his first provoking book that if we, any time that we gather to explore the Bible, to have a Bible study, a sermon, a Sunday school class, whatever, if we already have a preconceived notion and idea and understanding of what this text is about, we already know what that text is about, then why are we taking the time to come at it on that particular day? So he takes that maybe to an extreme sometimes, but I kind of like this idea of provoking. And again, not willy-nilly, provoking based on educated guesses of what might be the possibility. But this idea that maybe the Bible has, or even just one story that you'll hear today, might have something to stir you up a little bit, or get you thinking in a way that you hadn't previously. So I just say that up front because I might do some things specifically to provoke you, and then anything that comes up as a result of that, anything that surprised you as a result of the presentation, you are invited, in fact, welcomed to and encouraged to share afterwards. We good with that? Okay, good. So I'd like to start with a story that I tell a lot, and especially driving through the beautiful countryside yesterday to get here, not from Baltimore. I'd come up a few days early to spend some time with my friend in Utica, who you will see performing in December and June, right? Dennis Dewey, he's a good friend of mine from this network of biblical storytellers. And so I came up a few days early to spend some time with Dennis and his wife, and I had the beautiful drive yesterday here, and I'm anticipating a drive down to the Poconos to spend that tonight with another friend. And every time, especially this time of year, I know it's not your favorite time of the year, but this really excites me. I love this time of year. It's my favorite time of year. And I'm just taken away by the beauty of creation. So there are a lot of communities and civilizations over the years who have come up with their version of how all of this came to be. And so the story, the version of our Judeo-Christian tradition of how all of this came to be is the very first story we find in the Bible. You open the Bible, you get past the table of contents and the title page and all that. This is the very first story that you would come upon. So I'm sure it's a story you're familiar with, but I invite you to hear it. Actually, as a friend of mine says, I invite you to hear it with new eyes and to see it with new ears. In the beginning, it was God who created the heavens and the earth. Now at this time, the earth was just a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God, the breath of God, sometimes called Ruach, blew out over the face of the waters. And God spoke and said, "Let there be light." And it was so. And God saw that the light was good. Now God separated the light from the darkness. The light God called day. The darkness God called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. I didn't warn you. I'm going to ask you to help me tell the story. And the main thing I need you to do is help me keep track of what day we're on. All right? So when you hear me say there was evening, there was morning, first day, second day, third day. And if you think it's easy, it's not. So to help you remember, if you can show me which day, then we're all going to stay on track. All right? So here we have the first day. There was evening and there was morning the first day. You didn't show me. There was evening, there was morning the first day. Excellent. Then God said, all right, let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, separating the waters from the waters. And it was so. God did indeed create a dome that separated the waters above the dome from the waters beneath the dome. And God called that dome sky, the heavens, the firmament. Yeah. God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. Then God said, okay, now, let all the water that's underneath the dome be gathered together into one place and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God gathered together all the water that was underneath the dome, gathered it all together in one place, and then the dry land appeared. Now, the dry land God called earth. The waters God called seas, or lakes. Which direction? Lake, yeah. And God saw that it was good. And then God said, let the earth bring forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruit trees bearing fruit, which is their seed. Let them be each one according to their own kind. And it was so. God covered the earth with vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruit trees bearing fruit, which is their seed, each one according to their own kind. And God looked and saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. Then God said, let there be lights in that dome of the sky them stand for days and for years, for signs and for seasons. Let them shed their light upon the earth, ruling over the day and night, separating the light from the darkness. And it was so. God created the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, which we call the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, which we call the moon. And God also created the stars, putting each one in a very special place. And there they sat, shedding their light upon the earth, ruling over the day and night, separating the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. And then God said, let the seas bring forth living creatures, and let winged creatures, otherwise known as birds, cover the earth so they can fly over the earth across the dome of the sky. And it was so. God brought forth all of the great sea monsters, and everything with which the waters swarm. And God also created the birds. And God blessed them and said, now be fruitful and multiply, filling the seas, and let the birds multiply, covering the earth so they can fly over the earth across the dome of the sky. And it was so. And God saw that it was good. It was evening, and it was morning, the fifth day. Then God said, let the earth be covered with beasts, or wild animals, each according to their kind, and cattle, or tame animals, each according to their kind, and creepy crawling things to crawl upon the face of the earth, each one according to their kind. It was so. God created all of the great wild beasts, each one according to their kind, and God also created the tame cattle, each one according to their kind, and God also created the creepy crawling things that crawl upon the face of the earth, each one according to their kind. And God saw that even the creepy crawling things were all good. That was when God said, let us create people, human beings, in our likeness. Let them be fruitful and multiply, filling the earth and taking charge of everything I have created. And it was so. God did indeed create people, human beings, both male and female, both created in the image of God. And God blessed them and said to them, now be fruitful and multiply, filling the earth and being responsible for all of creation. Now, look, I've given you every good green plant for food. Plants yielding seeds. The fruit trees bearing fruit, which is their seed. These are for you, the beasts, the cattle. In fact, everything that has that ruach, breath of life. Have I given every good green plant for food? And then, God took a look at everything that had been created. And by everything, I mean everything that had been created. And it was all very good. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. And then, on the seventh day, And that's why, to this very day, the seventh day is meant to be a sacred day, a holy day, a day where we don't work or even worry about work, but rather rest from all the worry and work of the other 6 days of the week. Now, I don't know about all of you, but for me, that makes the seventh day very, very good. Amen. Now, you all, sometimes I have to give a little talk. I feel like you all kind of naturally picked up on this, but let me just affirm how some of you felt comfortable enough to laugh. I have, in fact, our good friend Dennis Dewey down the road, he is fond of saying that it's not a matter of inserting humor into the Bible. It's a matter of uncovering the humor that's already there, that maybe has been covered up with all the barnacles from all of the centuries, right? Often people have felt like, well, that's maybe showing disrespect if we portray a character in the Bible or if we try to make a story from the Bible funny. I think nothing could be further from the truth. The Bible is nothing if not a collection of stories about very human people. And part of the human experience, it's not the whole human experience, but part of the human experience is laughter. And especially if we can't laugh about ourselves or, what kind of existence would we have? So thank you for already, you laughed a little this morning with the pig herdsman, and which was great. You were supposed to laugh at that. And I encourage you throughout the rest of the afternoon as I tell stories to feel free to laugh. And so I like to tell this story because for Bibles that include subtitles, which not all Bibles do, but some Bibles give little titles for the little stories therein. And sometimes, or some of the Bibles, refer to this story as Sarah's laughter. So it's right there in the title. Right? And so I like to tell this just to get even more obvious permission to laugh. So you got to, well, I'll tell. Oh, actually, we're supposed to say what surprised you about the first story. I forgot that myself. So before we get to Sarah's laughter, the creation story, was there anything that surprised you? God acting tired. Yeah, we don't think of God needing a rest, do we? That's maybe some food for thought. What does that mean? One other person? Anything else?
You saved the best for last.
Save the best for last. So we would like to think. I don't know if the animals would agree, but humans certainly would agree with that. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Again, there might be more, but we'll continue and see if there's anything in this story that surprises you. Now the Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat in his chair at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. And looking up, he saw 3 visitors standing nearby. And he got up and he got up, and he quickly went to them, and he fell on the ground before them, and he said, "My Lord, if it pleases my Lord, please don't pass your servant by, but come, have a seat there in the shade. I can bring some water so that you can wash your feet. Come, sit down, rest a while. I'll bring a morsel of bread so that you can refresh yourself before you pass on your way, if your servant finds favor in your sight." And the visitors said to Abraham, "Do as you have said." So Abraham got up, and he went into the tent where his wife Sarah was, and he said to her, "Quick, take 3 measures of the best barley, knead it and make cakes. And then he went out and over to his flocks, and he chose a young calf, tender and good, and gave it to his servant to prepare. And then he went and he collected some milk and some curds, and the meat that had been prepared. And he came and he set all of this before his visitors. And then while they ate, he stood behind them in the shade under the tree. Now, one of the visitors was the Lord, who said to Abraham, "Where's your wife, Sarah?" And Abraham said, "Oh, she's there in the tent." And the Lord said to him, "I will return in due season, and when I do, Sarah will have a son." Now, something you need to understand. Both Abraham and Sarah were old. I mean, old. It had ceased to be with Sarah in the matter according to women. Yeah. So when Sarah, who had been listening there at the entrance to the tent, heard this, what do you think she did? You better believe it. Said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Oh, what, now that I'm old, I'm to have children?' Is anything impossible with God? I tell you the truth. I will return in due season at the appointed time. And when I do, Sarah will have a son." Well, this time, Sarah became pregnant. And she said, "Oh, I didn't laugh." But the Lord said to her, "Oh, yes, you did." Well, the Lord remembered the promise that had been made to Sarah. And sure enough, in due season, at the appointed time, guess what? She got pregnant. And she gave birth to a son. And this son, born to Abraham by his wife, Sarah, he called laughter. That's what Isaac means. Laughter. And when Laughter was 8 days old, Abraham had him circumcised according to the agreement that he had made with God. And then Sarah said, "Shh. Oh, God has made me laugh. And now everyone who hears will laugh right along with me. Who would have ever thought to tell Abraham that I, his wife, would nurse children? And yet in his old age and mine, I have indeed borne him a son." Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac, Laughter, was born to him. And his wife was 90. This morning, I made a quick reference in one of my stories to David being hungry and in need and eating the bread of the presence, which he wasn't allowed or supposed to eat. David is a fascinating character in the Bible, one that I heard somebody give a couple of keynote speaks, talks on. And the first day, she gave us all the reasons why we hate David and why we want to hate David. But the second day was all the reasons why we love David and want to love him. He's a very complex character. And so I'm going to tell you just a piece of his story, and it's one that isn't, I don't think, as well known maybe as some of the others. And it involves, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best heroines of the Bible, someone who still can be a great example for us today, living in a world that seems to be so hungry for war and violence and might making right, and she shows us another way. So just to set the context a little bit, David has already been anointed by God, and the promise has been made to him that he is going to become the ruler of Israel. But not yet, because there's already a ruler, a guy named Saul, right? And there's lots of stories with Saul's son Jonathan and David's relationship with Saul, which started out nice. He played the lyre, and it would soothe Saul, and then Saul got jealous because he's the king, and who does this young whippersnapper think he is? God anointed me, which God did anoint Saul, and then God came to have disfavor for Saul and anointed David. But David hasn't taken over as the ruler yet. In fact, he's on the lam because Saul's after him. Saul feels so threatened by David that he wants to kill him. So David is on the lam out in the wilderness when this story takes place. Nabal was a very wealthy man. He owned 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, which he kept in nearby Carmel. He lived in Maon. Nabal also had a wife, Abigail, who was very beautiful. She also had brains. She was the sensible one of that duo. Nabal, he was mean and rough. Well, what do you expect? He was a member of the clan of Caleb. Well, one day, Nabal went to nearby Carmel, and he oversaw the shearing of his many sheep. Well, David, who was out in the wilderness with his men, heard about it. And so from his camp there in the wilderness, David sent 10 messengers to Nabal with this message. I hope that you and your family are healthy and that everything is going well for you. I heard that you were shearing your sheep today. You know, when your shepherds were with my men on Carmel, we did them no harm, and nothing was ever stolen from them. Ask your shepherds, they'll tell you the same story. My servants are your servants, and you are like a father to me. So on this day of celebration, won't you show us some kindness and share some of your food with me and with my men? That was the message that the 10 messengers took to Nabal. They delivered the message and waited for his reply. And this is how Nabal replied. Who does this David think he is? That son of Jesse is just another slave on the run from his master. We've already got plenty of them already, too many of them these days. What makes him think that I would take my water, my bread, and the meat that I had prepared for my men and share it with him. In fact, how can I even be sure that he's the one that sent you in the first place? So the 10 messengers went back to David's camp and told him what Nabal had said. And David's reply was an order. Everybody strap on your swords. So they all strapped on their swords. And then David left 200 of his men there to guard the camp, while he took the remaining 400 men with him. Meanwhile, one of the servants went and found Abigail and said to her, "Look, when David's men were with our men there at Carmel, they were very kind to us. They did us no harm. They made sure that nothing was ever stolen. In fact, with his men around, we felt like as safe as we would have felt inside a walled city." Well, he sent some messengers with a message of good cheer to our master. And how did he respond? With threats. Oh, he is such a bully. He won't listen to anyone. Except maybe you. Please, can you do something? You've got to think of something, because if you don't, then our master, his family, and everyone who works for him is surely doomed. And Abigail immediately began to gather together 200 loaves of bread, 2 large clay jars of wine, the meat from 5 sheep, a huge sack of grain, 100 handfuls of raisins, 200 handfuls of dried figs, and she loaded all of this food onto donkeys. She loaded all of this food onto donkeys. She loaded all of this food onto the donkeys, and then she sent her servants on, saying, I'll catch up with you. She did not tell her husband Nabal what she was doing. Well, later she got onto her own donkey, and she was riding the donkey on the path that went around the hill when she came face to face with David and his men, who were coming straight at her. And David had just been saying to his men, "Boy, did I waste my time guarding Nabal's men and his possessions out there in the wilderness. I showed him nothing but kindness, but how does he repay me? With insults? Oh, I swear to you, by tomorrow morning there will not be one man or boy left alive in Nabal's family or in the families of any of his servants. In fact, may God punish me if I don't follow through on that threat." Well, Abigail quickly got off her donkey. And she came and she bowed low to the ground before David, and she said to him, Sir, please, let me explain. Pay no attention to that good-for-nothing Nabal. He's nothing but a Nabal, a fool. Boy, was he named properly. Look, I didn't see or talk to the men that you sent, but please, accept my gifts of food for you and your followers. The Lord has kept you from taking revenge or killing innocent people. But I hope that your enemies and anyone who wishes you harm, well, I hope they become like Nabal. I swear this in the name of the Lord your God and on your life as well. Please forgive me if I say just a little bit more. God has promised to do many great things for you, even to make you the ruler of Israel. And you can go forward now with a clear conscience, because you have not taken revenge or killed innocent people. But God will always protect you and your family, because you fight for the Lord. But Anybody who wishes you harm, God will snatch them up faster than you can sling a stone. Look, God will do many good things for you. God will keep those promises made to you. And when you receive those promises, could you please remember me? Well, David replied, "May the Lord God of Israel be praised. The Lord who clearly sent you here to meet me today. And you also are to be praised for your good sense and your quick thinking. If you had not come and met me as quickly as you did, I promise you that tomorrow morning every man and boy in Nabal's family and in the families of all of his servants would have been killed. I swear this to you in the name of the Lord God of Israel, who protected you today, by the way, that this is true." And then David said to Abigail, "You can go home, don't worry. I'll do as you've said." So Abigail went home, and she found her husband Nabal throwing a party fit for a king. He was Larry. He was really drunk. So she didn't say anything to him that night. But the next morning, once he had sobered up, she told him everything. And when Nabal heard this, he had a heart attack. And he fell over, lying in his bed, still as a stone, for 10 days. After which time, the Lord took his life. Well, once David heard that Nabal had died, he said, "May the Lord God of Israel be praised, who clearly punished Nabal for his insults aimed at me. The Lord prevented me from taking revenge or killing innocent people, but made sure that Nabal hurt only himself with his evil ways." And then, realizing that Abigail, who was now at Carmel, was now a widow, he sent some messengers to her, asking her to marry him. And Abigail, she fell on the ground before David's messengers and said, "I would gladly be David's slave and wash his servants' feet." That's how bad things had been with Nabal. So she quickly gathered together all of her things, climbed back up onto her donkey, and along with 5 of her attendants, followed David's men. And as soon as she arrived, she and David were married. All right, again, I forgot to ask after the last story. So let's do this one while it's fresh in our mind, and then we'll go back to Sarah's laughter. So, Abigail's story. Is there anything that surprised you in this story?
She would be bold enough to go against what she obviously knew her husband.
Took a lot of guts, a lot of courage. Absolutely, absolutely. Anything else that surprised you about Abigail's story?
That David actually listened to her rather than continue on her story.
Right, right. You know, it's easy to, it's easy to judge David. I mean, it seems like, wow, does the punishment fit the crime here? You know, I mean, it seems really crazy. And I still think it is really crazy. But we also have to understand that it's something that's not a part of our culture. Hospitality still is actually, a huge, huge deal in the biblical times in the Middle East. You were expected to show hospitality even to your enemies. I mean, it's that big of a deal with honor and just this is how you're supposed to be. And so it was a huge insult. I mean, it was a huge slap in the face. was what David wanted to do justified? Again, is the punishment for the crime? That's a matter of discussion. But the insult that Nabal gave to David, really, it was a big deal. And so for David to listen to Abigail, to receive her hospitality as a substitute for what her husband should have offered, it is kind of a big deal, because it sounds like he's breathing threats. Well, he is breathing threats of murder, and she avoided a huge bloodbath, because again, it wasn't just Nabal's family; it was the family of every one of his servants. Wow. Okay, think back, and from now on, just remind me if I start on with the next story and I have forgotten to ask for surprises. Let's think back to the Sarah's laughter. We didn't do that. We didn't do surprise. Yeah. So, was there anything about the Sarah's laughter story that surprised you?
Yes, I hadn't thought about more along the lines of someone having a child at that age, but okay, how old would they be when this child was 8, 10, 12? Oh, my God.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, it was, and again, are we to take the ages literally? I don't know if they were literally that old, but they were old, so regardless, there's a reason that, childbearing years are when you're younger and have more energy and, those sorts of things. Right. Anything else that surprised you about Sarah's laughter?
I never knew that Isaac meant laughter.
Yeah, isn't that a delightful part of the story? Yeah. I just think that's sort of a perfect, sort of cherry on top for that story. Yes. Okay.